So, we finally come to Odyssey and what seems to be the life culmination of Really Dangerous. Now, this 4-part review has taken me over 2 hours and I didn't even delve into details that much. However, to catch up all of you to what happened up until this point for Odyssey, here's a brief timeline. It's early 2019 and the content drought and developer presence is nearly dried up as the Beyond series has ended. Then one day on the 4chan, an unexpected and of course anonymous poster, like a bloated whale ready to explode of the churning intestinal gases, dropped a small yet interesting information claiming to have insider knowledge of Frontier. As it's been 2 years since that post, it's interesting to look back on everything that came out of Frontier, of course not counting upcoming titles like Planet Coaster 2 or whatnot. But the point is, thus far the poster was not wrong. For Really Dangerous, poster mentions something called Project Watson, now known as Odyssey, and the things get interesting from here.
The major direction change in generating services for what's not Odyssey.
We get the mentions of Space Legs, check. Targoids in Flesh, uncheck, well, at least for now. FPS gameplay, check. Base building, uncheck. It almost felt like a holy grail. It's hard to overstate the overall community's wish for the Space Legs feature. And here it was, the first hint since the game launched. 2020, as the pandemic hit, Frontier was no exception. Still, this year things should ramp up. They already delayed the new era when it was supposed to be coming out after Beyond series, ideally, right? Well, the overall year started with community management shake-up as some faces changed. At this point, also in time, everyone was already incredibly sick of the company's silence and lack of any kind of change in the game itself. Even Galnet and community goals were put on a shelf for a while. That's how bad the drought was. However, coming to summer of 2020, by an accident, a trailer was posted for Space Legs, for Odyssey. It was pretty funny to see how this big hype project announcement be dropped harder than a slippery baby after birth on a hard tiled and cold floor. One could even say that the marketing and PR teams truly dropped the ball on this one. From the trailer we knew Space Legs, this coveted and obvious step forward for the game, actually was going to be a reality. I just wonder, when did they actually wanted to release this thing, if someone hadn't pile-driven the toddler? Oh well. The hype was there, the interest in Elite was at all-time high. Fanboys were jizzing their pants. It truly looked like Elite would finally check off that annoying feature that Star Citizen and other peers of the game already had. Even the cynical Latvian fuck like TheYamiks was... well, hello? Yet in typical TheYamiks manner, I smelt that something was off. Wouldn't you show your character actually climbing out of the spaceship or walking through it? It literally is trailer material for the first teaser. Didn't take long for the extra PR pieces both in video and text format to come out. I called out developers about the ship interiors and the weird absence of them in all promotional material. Finally, they caved in and admitted my genius observational skills. There would not be ship interiors. The first warning signs were popping off. Not only interiors were not part of Odyssey, but as I so rightfully pointed out, that next-gen console versions were not going to happen either. Instead, Frontier would rely on console makers and their backwards compatibility to make Elite playable on the new systems. And the third big disappointment came with the news that VR also would not be supported. A little later that year, Insider Core Creator Group for favoritized streamers and video makers was set up with promises to better communication and... yeah, well, in the last part of the series I mentioned how that ended up. Yet, not counting the pants-moistening hype train that steamrolled through the front door and fucked you in the ass, there were two genuinely positive changes coming for the game this year. Combat got rebalanced by some fucking miracle after years of proven problems, and the change wasn't a major one, but at least it was something. And the other one was the Horizons merge with the base game, which was a positive move to reduce the player segregation, and if anything else, it was a positive for everyone. What was not a good move was what happened when Dev Diary number 2 accidentally leaked again. It seems that PR team just can't get a break, can they? You see, I spotted this accidental ejaculation of mediocre information on Reddit, where it was posted and commented underneath. Then, skip a few minutes and an employee of Frontier is trying to desperately contact me. They ask what I know and if I have the full video stashed somewhere. Basically what happened there was that they tried to learn how much an independent media member knows about their super secret secrets. Now, I was forthcoming as a goodwill token and explained, I'm not a monster, well, last I checked at least. Then the conversation moved to the topic of giveaway key requests, which I hand out in streams to the people who watch or just simply enjoy the game, Fun giveaway, why not? Now that year, all of a sudden, they were getting denied, and this employee offered a private conversation to discuss this thing at a later date, to talk over this relationship between the company and yours truly. And it doesn't hurt to talk things over, so I agreed to it. As it turns out, that ended up being an empty promise and a shallow, pathetic platitude, because afterwards, they ghosted me. Well, until TheYamiks made some more stink and they could not ignore me again. 2021. It started innocently enough. Odyssey would get a pre-release playable alpha just to milk that extra deluxe pre-order money by exploiting the FOMO effect, and I, being a member of the media, requested a review copy for it. It can't hurt, right? Now I promise I won't go into the deep detail here. You can check out the video I made specifically about this debacle, but the long story short was, they write me back and tell me that somehow, some way, inexplicably, being both the developer, publisher, and having complete control over the release of this product, they somehow had limited digital keys for reviewers. Yep. Let that sink in. And that they would be giving them only to their core creators and media. Remember that insider group? TheYamiks, of course, smelling the bullshit, pipes up and makes a stink about it. By some fucking miracle, they contact me for a change and apologize for such a response. Additionally, they tell me the real reason they are denying the review copy, which is not hard to guess for anyone why. And that could have been just fine, but they just could not leave it alone and continue by insinuating incompetence, unbiased nature, and more so, pure fucking malice on my part. So from now on, in Frontier's mind, whenever TheYamiks uses shit, piss, cunt, tits, dick, ass, bitch, chode, schlong, and many other colorful, expressive words and sentences, I always and without exception, intend to cause upset. What a cheeky cunt muffin I am, right? No matter, it was time for the alpha. The first taste of Odyssey was released, and to milk it even harder for 5 straight weeks. Each new week, more of the functionality was unlocked for the game. And despite the clear PR and marketing bullshittery, this was cynically well done. Space legs! Space legs! Space legs! Despite some warning signs, this bite-sized chicken McNugget sample seemed even moderately okay. At first look. Yes, the performance was in the shitter, but I knew that this release was some old version of the game before the dev team got to do optimization, which they are doing right now as we speak. Right? Right? I had the full trust in coders to squish the performance right, and unlike some of my peers, I never bothered to complain about it at that stage. My focus was on the horrible design, decisions, and direction. Obviously, in this quote-unquote alpha, you would never expect the whole experience. However, TheYamiks smelled that something was hiding behind the bleachers, something disfigured and corrupted. A few weeks pass and the official finished and full release of the game launches on 19th May 2021. Remember this date, it's important. On Steam, the game is polished and pretty with no early access title pestering the storefront. Players booted up the game and it was amazing! The Game of the Year edition, it sparkled even. It was so unbelievable because it was the alpha. I shit you not. The full release was barely an altered version from what people saw in this FOMO-driven marketing example. To everyone's horror, the shit performance, cut down feeling features, and general lack of them for at least $40 was the best thing after 3 years of development that Frontier could come up with. What followed swiftly was mass negative reviews, reaching mostly negative on Steam in the first week of release, and since has not improved. The community and even those outside it went into the frenzy and shit was flung everywhere. It was a rightful pandemonium. Even funnier is to look back now and see the fair few folks who were in denial about the state of the product and how Frontier handled it. Some even went into counterattack, grabbing newly released microtransactions for the guns at mass, and fuck me. At the time I did not notice this, but Frontier flooded their store with this garbage for massive prices, as if it was going out of business, and honestly that might have been the case. Yet, given enough time, it's been 6 months later as I write the script, a few weeks actually before Elite's anniversary. Surely the worst is over. Surely they managed to unfuck themselves. Surely, at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, about that. Oh, and as for the 2022, well, we know these things. Another SRV is coming, according to 2019 leak, as well as the in-game data dump files. A hint of Targoids on foot might be a thing, and for the base building, again hinted in the 4chan leak, no clue about that one, but I would not be surprised if it was coming at the very last hurrah, the very end of Odyssey's 2-year support plan. Like the last smelly fart from the granny who wanted y'all to know she hated you to her last bodily function. And that's the general timeline for Odyssey and the game itself. Now I know it's a lot to process, so how about we start with something that won't make us all commit intense Sudoku tonight. The good bits! Who wanted walking on foot? Not me! This snarky question was even heard from some of my creator peers, especially after it was clear how bad Odyssey was past its launch. Well, tough titties, you're fucking wrong! Walking on foot, experiencing the first-person perspective was basically writing on the wall for the next step to take, and not daring to take it would indicate cowardice and stagnation. Make no mistake, Space Legs feature is like movie writing itself, or autoerotic asphyxiation, or chocolate on the chocolate chip cookies. You know, it can't get more obvious. But why is it good? Well, take your pick. A closer look into the world, experiencing it from a perspective that puts you in the right mindset. Not an over-bloated ship or an SRV that is larger than your mom. Maybe it's to experience that immersion that VR troopers have been talking about without going broke and resorting to turning tricks in a back alley for VR headset. Maybe it's to give the players that final key piece puzzle to join the whole experience of the game as a single entity, undisrupted and so immersive. Maybe it's to make Elite even more approachable, since FPS gameplay is so intuitive. Maybe it's to keep pushing the tech and bring Elite as a whole into the modern age after 6 years of, well, rather mediocre graphics. All these are good enough reasons, while the best counter-argument you could have is, "But I don't wanna, 'cause this is my game, mine!" Elite from the beginning was built as a first-person experience. In Ship, you see your character, not just screens. In SRV, it's the same. The little touches gave Elite that believability. However, due to several factors like narrow FOV or over-bloated cockpits made the feeling of piloting a massive space vehicle kinda disappear. To make a continued immersion driving milestone for the game, just like with SRV back in Horizon's days, an obvious natural step was to take take the game and go full first person. And the same thing goes with the shooter part. Not only shooter games have been part of the cultural history, but it's simply also fun. It reaches new types of audiences, more importantly, and generally is expected. Not to mention that these days, rather easy to make. What? Oh, is it time for the bad stuff? No. Well, sorry, no, not yet. Let's call this the horse shadowing. Seriously, a space game without pew-pews is like a cocaine psychosis without the cocaine. It's just mentally unstable. Then expectedly in Odyssey you get better textures and models, though you can't do much with them. There is no option to sit down or have any other interaction with them, sadly. Still, at the very least it looks presentable and some kind of an upgrade for existing game. That's positive. They also added fidelity effects, which is a nice little touch for the super low-end machines or people who have absolutely no taste and think that over-contrasted and over-sharpened picture is a good thing. You know, the legally blind players. And finally, something, as developers promised back in Horizon's days, more planets were going to be unlocked, and that had to be atmospheric planets. Well, in Odyssey, what we got was the light atmosphere planets, and that's it. How are they unique? Well, they have a pretty skybox shader that render coders found in about 10 seconds online and implemented. And, yes, well, new plants. Yes, they're pretty cool. That's cool. Despite my presentation, genuinely I do think that this expansion, DLC, update, whatever it is, essentially is going the right direction. Sure, you could have gone the other directions of the game, just expanding the existing things. However, I think that this brings in a new type of a player, the FPS player, and basically it's a writing on the wall, a golden ticket, and not taking it would be a mistake. So, the question remains, in the wake of what can best be described as explosive gonorrhea cancer menstruation, what the fuck happened?
This is where the fun begins. Well, let's look at what the fuck went wrong.
Let's then start with the very simple planets. See, back in the day, developers, as Horizons came out, unlocked approximately 51% of the galaxy's planets to land on. All of them were non-atmosphere ones that were not gas giants, and promised to unlock more as the time went on. After what felt like decades, we get the first unlocked things ever. Mind you, we all still expected the unknown permit-locked regions to finally be done away with, or at least learn more about that crap, but, well, I guess light atmosphere planets is all we're gonna get now. And they make up extra 5% of existing planets, so 56% it is. Oh, and when it comes to walking on them, basically the game wants you to stop having fun and demands that you wear a spacesuit. And you see that very spacesuit has very small operational time window, which, unlike SRV, can't be synthesized for. Yeah, about that. So basically, the new planets are, sure, with the new planet tech generation, but the difference between light atmospheres and non-light atmospheres is just a skybox and a few plants, and that's it? The 3-year development is just new planet surfaces and a few plants and a skybox from a multi-million-dollar company that charges $40 for this thing? Maybe I missed something. Nope, the only thing that was different was the whole planet generation tech, which meant that all planets needed to be regenerated with different surfaces. So, fuck the unique discoveries explorers have made throughout the whole game's history. Just erase it all. Oh, and you want to see an example? Oh, well, here we go. A planet like Pomecha 2C, or the Testicle Planet, look amazing with their deep canyons and interesting colors. It went from this to this, and later with some extra coloring work to this. Oh, and you know what's interesting? Human brain. You see, your brain is pretty good at noticing patterns, and on launch as well as in the alpha already, the new planet tech made these sorts of examples. In some cases, from orbit, a planet may look like it has canyons, yet as you go closer up, the surface flattens out, as if it was using some sort of a over-the-top bump mapping technique from early 2000s. This made people wonder, well, what planets did they use for the trailers? Well, as it turns out, it was this. They weren't just cherry-picked planets, but outright misleading, and to some, it was even lying. And who can blame them for saying that? To compound the issues, the new system was less interesting. No deep canyons for the players who love racing in them, or explorers to find unique landscapes. Sure, it was glossier, yet more homogeneous. The so-called mountains too looked like just a bad height map generated by an amateur code. It was clear, the new planets were worse, despite their prettier dress-up by lighting and perhaps a skybox. You know, here's a funny thing. You can actually boot up both Horizons and Odyssey version minutes apart from each other and see the same planet completely differently. Now, this will be a thing until developers can actually run this Odyssey mess on consoles. Now, but as for the next issue,
one of the key things I really wanted to push was the idea that you'd kind of get that Neil Armstrong moment when you actually set foot on a planet for the first time.
So, why do I make such a big deal to relentlessly mock this thing? Well, if you haven't caught on already for some weird reason, just like with a personal narrative, that was basically a bullshit thinly veiled marketing term for the tech broker's grind, this is the same case. The dipshits in the marketing decided to use a historical, cultural, and scientific milestone for their bullshit product, even going as far as to be completely oblivious to how insulting their execution was. Yes, obviously they refer to being on an alien planet. However, go right now on the street and ask any random passerby about Neil Armstrong and the historical moment. Just leave it there and ask what comes to their mind first. I bet my kidneys the answer will be, "Oh, you meant the moment when Neil said one small step and stepped off the ladder for the first time?" You see, this moment refers to actually the process of transitioning from a man-made craft to a desolate alien world, not just spontaneously teleporting onto it. I so fucking hate this double-speak marketing, where they must have known how important this experience was, but fuck it, Johnny the coder and Bob the animator could not pull their shit together and make an animation at the very least, like what they did with the SRV back in Horizons days. However, that was Yamiks being Yamiks and taking the piss. The real sad story has to do with the fact that these ships, the central focal point, the main tool of interacting with the whole environment of the game, with the addition of space legs and the first person walking around, that environment we grew to inhabit the most, not even the cockpit would be walkable inside our ships. There would be no ship interiors. Now, before we light up our torches and form an angry mob as if it's the Dark Ages and Frontier is a young, semi-attractive, vulnerable gal, we have to take a look at where this idea came from. Now, obviously you can't go too far without mentioning of Star Citizen. Now, even back in 2012, when both games were announced, it was pretty clear that this would be a main feature, and considering that Star Citizen has raked in $400 at the backs of barely working and, frankly speaking, JPEG levels of spaceships with such feature, well, it's kind of hard to ignore the relevancy and importance of it. Still, in Kickstarter days, developers mention things like these.
So that's what I'm looking forward to in the future for the game. Being able to get out of my ship, get into one of those stations and do what I imagined doing when I was 7 years old.
I love the idea of going down to a planet's surface, getting out of my ship, maybe driving around in a buggy, that sort of thing.
I think there's so much to do. I think I'm quite looking forward to being able to walk around space stations. I would love to see players running around their ship and other ships, dealing with emergencies and repelling boarders, cleaning up toxic spillages, exploring derelict husks.
One of the things that we've implemented on some of the larger ships is based on a grid system of meter squares. So the cockpit is of a certain size, and within that there's a lift shaft, and that shaft will then channel down and be the same position throughout the ship on all the lower decks.
What's really exciting is zero gravity. It's something you don't see in a lot of games, and being able to sort of float around your ship, float through the corridors and float out of your ship and sort of climb around it, fix something on the outside, I think that would be really cool.
I love things like walking around inside the ship and the space station, but the thing to me is going around seeing a distant world. That's probably the thing I'm excited about the whole thing.
The language they use here is "I wish" or "it'd be nice to" rather than "it will happen." So by all accounts in Kickstarter it was more of a "hey, imagine one day this would be one of many scenarios the game could go." And that's fine. In this particular one, for example...
Another thing that we are doing, again down the line, is that you will be able to walk around inside your ship. You'll be able to get out of your ship, walk around inside space stations, other vehicles, all of that sort of thing. We've shown the damage on the ship, the damage models. Imagine looking at that from inside the ship outwards, seeing your cargo flying out into space, seeing the flames, trying to fight them. All of those things that we plan with time, they won't be at the first release because we want to do them right. We want to do them well. We want to do them right. We want to do them well. We want to do them right. We want to do them well. We want to do them right. We want to do them well.
Later, it was confirmed by one of the developers on Twitter that it was only a design consideration to keep the ship scale and size appropriate. So, do not mistake this for ship interior designs at the time. I just wish I had saved the tweet myself at the time, so yeah, it's out there, and I'll try to link it in the description if I find it. However, if you go on a Wayback Machine and look up 2014 version of Elite Dangerous page, you might stumble upon this particular promise. This is just the beginning! The first release of Elite Dangerous will not mark the end of development. We intend to continue expanding the game both with new content and new features. A good example of this is planetary landings. We have an ambitious goal for landings to include new gameplay and rich variety of worlds to explore. To achieve our goal, we want the plans to come to life. We also want to add leaving the ship so you can explore space stations, or board enemy vessels, or just to look around your own. We intend to release small, free updates after the launch, but major expansions, including new, rich features, will be charged for, unless you have bought the expansion pass. Oh, and speaking of the expansion pass, this is addendum. Funny thing is that they sold these expansion pass or lifetime expansion hold whatever thingamajigs for about 120 euros, or was it pounds? I don't remember exactly, but the point is, it cost far more than the game, even at the time with the Horizons coming out, would cost together. Promising that, hey, we're gonna be giving you the free updates or, well, the expansions whenever they come afterwards. However, after only 6 years when the Odyssey came out, the expansion pass got its worth in the price, as would normal players buy them. So I wonder where the fuck was that value? Frankly speaking, it almost felt like a fucking scam. But that's a whole different fucking topic, of course. Funny thing is that the only gift that the developers actually gave to these lifetime pass holders during the time between Horizons and Odyssey was one single ship skin. Yeah, let just that sink in. God. This was back in 2014 when Elite launched. Clearly, at some point, they've forgotten about this particular design decision. Oh, and then there's also this video. Read the description, please. Getting up and out of your seat and walking around your ship will be just the beginning for plans to expand Elite Dangerous after initial product. Imagine landing on planets and boarding other ships. Yet now we get the talking heads presenting the public with statements like these.
which I know. And look, chat, we understand some people may have wanted to have the full ship interiors, but I will go back to what we've already discussed. Everything done with Odyssey is purely based around longevity of gameplay and stuff like the sheer scale of these ships to sort of. It would be fun, in my opinion, and I'm happy to be at odds with different people in the chat, which I'm sure I will be. It would be fun to run up the steps the first 5, 6, 7 times, but then after you've done that 1,000 times, you're probably going to be a little bit more, I just need to get into my ship. And especially if you are leaving someplace in a hurry in a big ship, you probably wouldn't want to be spending 10 minutes running down the corridors as people are laying into your ship. So a lot of this stuff is done to enhance the gameplay. And to focus on really those core gameplay loops which we spoke about. But for me, I think it's something I'm used to, and it's there. You've seen it now. That is the transition.
Yeah. As I said at the start, I'm just here giving you the answer that I have, and everyone will shout at me and tell me that I'm wrong. But I'm giving you the answer that you will ask for. You asked me to give you the honest answer of where FDev is at the moment with ship interiors, and they're not being looked at the moment. That is the answer, and I'm like, I will take the feedback and I will pass it on. But there's very little I, as a community manager, can do to build a ship interior for people. I can try and relay the message as best I can. I have done that, I think, as best I can do right now. But if everyone's saying they want ship interiors, they won't play Elite unless they're ship interiors, then I'll pass that message back. But there's I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where Elite, I want to know where players will want this to. We want to push this forward as far as we can go, right? And if players are saying ship interiors is an absolute must, or it's going to break everything in the game, then obviously we'll assess it. But at the moment, it's a case of where do we put our resources at the moment, and at the moment, it's not ship interiors.
Whenever I see this, I always presume that these people, having been hired for the PR role and in position to answer questions, are speaking for the whole company or the dev team, and relaying messages that internally that team thinks, rather than just their own opinions and guesses. I mean, that would be highly unprofessional without disclosing, right? So, Frontier devs think that it would get boring to walk across your ship, the vehicle that you use day in and day out for literally everything, to expand its capabilities and the immersion. That would get boring, and is not even considered as a feature in modern day despite it being a very big PR promise in 2014. Is it me, or you two are smelling the steaming piles of contradictory and asinine bullshit? Well, let's have fun and get into these pathetic arguments. First, not having ship interiors is a choice for longevity of the game. This is a bit of a baffling statement, or excuse making. The choice not to design more immersive content for a game that is known for immersive play as one of its key selling points is a choice for longevity of the game. Only way that statement would make sense is that one of the other components that are developed of Odyssey in their mind would be far more better addition. Longevity of the game. Oh my god, is it the grind for materials on foot? Fuck me! It will get boring to walk aboard. Now, I hate to draw a comparison to another game or project as my first go-to, but this will be an exception. Have you seen the fucking Star Citizen? Fact is, as I stated, one of the strong suits of Elite is its immersion and experience and the feel of being aboard the ship, not magical brick that shits you out at a button press. Back in the day, the only way you could experience the ship's cockpits was through the VR. It's a fucking magical experience, I tell you that. Despite how many times you sit in a chair or get up to stretch your legs to look around. Yes, of course, you will get bored eventually, but as a point of comparison, are you fucking telling me that the majority of gameplay of Elite grinding materials is interesting? Wake the fuck up, Buttercup! Your game is filled with boring game loops. It's like you have no perception of what your fucking game is. Or maybe you know that it's bad, but unlike walking around, you spend less time coding the grind, while it also pumps up the player numbers. It will get boring and annoying when you want to quickly get off the ship or ground. Now, this got to be said by the most oblivious dipshit of a person I can think of, if there is such a person in the company. Could any of your game designers please educate the rest of the fucking team and tell them that the difficulty and the so-called friction that the player has to overcome to activate an ever larger and more powerful ship should scale up? Otherwise, when the small ship is just as easy and fast to use as the large ones, tell me, what the fuck is the point or difference in the feel, threat, and challenge of using the smaller or larger ship? And in case there's still out there someone that is even dumber than this and don't understand, let me give you an example, okay? And let me beat this dead horse of a point into the ground. You're on a planet's surface with a large ship. You first need to find a flat and big enough patch of dirt to land on, which most of the time is going to be further away from the settlement. So that's the challenge and friction number 1 with the ever bigger ships. Then, as you get back, say someone is chasing you with lasers and whatnot, in order to get your very expensive ship off the ground, which no doubt has a lot of capability, in order for it to be fair to the smaller, more nimbler ships, the time it takes for you to go through all the control rooms and stairs and whatnot else is the time your opponent is also given to start attacking or board your ship with you. Like what you fuckers promised in 2014! So here you have a choice. On foot missions you go with a small ship for stealthier, nimbler entry and exit. However, you're easy to shoot down, or risk your big Bertha and big rebuy if you fuck up. I seriously cannot believe that this is the whole dev team's sentiment on the ship interiors, but I guess here we are. And finally, Armstrong moment is to enhance the core gameplay loops. Yes, it is faster, and some things indeed must be faster than in real life, which does make them actually feel more realistic. But this is just retarded. You're training faster gameplay for an immersive feel, which I remind you again, in case you have not played Elite Dangerous, is one of its core successes. Oh, and here's a really big missed opportunity. EVA, or the spacewalks, those two are not part of the game. To this day, you can't fix two things of your ship without landing in a starport: the power plant and a fully broken canopy. Now, EVA, you see, could be a feature that could have allowed this sort of a repair, and maybe more, making space-dwelling explorers completely self-sufficient. But, even if they hadn't hinted or promised the ship interiors, that should have been the first thing the game should have gotten in the Project Watson, aka Odyssey. Your ship is your home, your everything, and fuck, how hard it would have been for them to just animate, like with SRV, getting off the chair and stepping outside, or for bigger ships even allow simple walking aboard the cockpit to give that little VR feel for the non-VR players, at the very least. But TheYamiks, you can't expect them to model everything in a ship. You know how long it would take? Okay, listen here, you fucking idiot. Did I suggest that I needed Star Citizen mega poly bullshit hyper jizzed interiors? Well, just like in life and marital relationships, it's all about compromise. There are thousands of possibilities that you could do, not just all or nothing. From the super hyper poly extravaganza to some simple nondescript and hell, even untextured corridors. Like similar to what they did with Apex shuttles in the alpha. This got to be the most laziest and pathetic thing I've ever seen Frontier pull. And it was to the deluxe version alpha, no less. And then we come to the gameplay that seems to be the most polished of today's turds. The first-person shooter. Maybe this is where they put the most outsourcing effort. Oh, sorry, I meant, did I say outsourcing? I meant, something. Now, I warn you, this is my wheelhouse, my home. I love FPS games and I do get a bit obsessed about it. So, Elite receiving this treatment of shooty bang bangs was such a positive and yet worrisome idea. On one hand, joining my favorite genre this game is, while on the other one, I am even more critical about it than any other type of gameplay. And knowing Frontier, they will find a way to fuck it up. Thankfully, they didn't. What they did with the FPS gameplay was a fucking war crime. A forceful, rusty bayonet abortion, if such a thing exists. Now, not to bore you with the technicalities and details too much, I made a sole FPS gameplay review/analysis, so I'll touch on the key points here, but please do go watch that video later when you get the chance. I'll link it in the description. It's 40 extra minutes. Yeah, I said I was obsessive, right? Basically, what I did with my favorite genre was the following. First, instead of even lazily copying already perfected formula from other established and critically respected examples for the fast-paced and reflex-based gameplay that is FPS, the absolute worst thing you can do is fondle the numbers so poorly that the gameplay turns into a massive bullet sponge. Now, Frontier did not do that. What they did instead of fondling these numbers was to iron grip squeeze and then rip them off, making to my knowledge bigger bullet sponge than any RPG based shooter I know. You know that feeling when you go to a too high leveled enemy and try to kill it? That's how Elite feels on everything. What these so-called designers did was to port over the same principles from the ship-based combat onto FPS combat. And may I remind you, Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, fuck, even in a single game of Battlefield, playing as on-foot soldier is not the same as in a fucking tank. Vehicle-based combat is exact opposite of FPS combat, yet whoever had this idiotic idea to port it over did not even consider it. Next, much like most other things in Odyssey, everything feels outsourced. The art style and design doesn't really match the dangerous style that we had before, especially in the suits. They fail to capture that unified look. Maybe I'm just paranoid as fuck, but looking at the Glassdoor reviews, I would not be surprised to learn that a lot of it was. And what about the AI? It's just sad. Very basic system, very shallow interactions as well as intelligence. This was clear already in alpha. AI truly is unchallenging, where the real quote-unquote difficulty is caused by the horrible bullet sponge, not the AI. And you know, off hours I'm playing Skyrim for the umpteenth fucking time, and even that has notably more interesting AI, as well as an actual stealth system. And to finish off what they did with the FPS, tell me, is Elite Dangerous a small game in size when it comes to its sandbox? No. Well, then that's kind of weird, because these quote-unquote designers thought that Elite was an arena shooter, so no weapon will deal damage past 300-meter range. Which means that in this massive fucking galaxy with one-to-one planet sandboxes, while you're on foot, you have to still literally be close enough to suck your opponent's dick before you can actually harm them. Oh, and remember this trailer footage? Yeah, that's such a bullshit scene. Not only is misrepresenting as fuck, but the gun this character is using, this marksman's rifle, the rifle that would be deemed to be a heavy long-range damage, but slow-firing thing, the sniper rifle. It shoots the slowest projectile I've ever seen. So slow that you can actually do this. Like a beautiful smelly turd in place of a cherry on top of this gelatinous puke soup cake, designers of this gameplay also removed headshot damage multipliers while the shields are on. Why? Well, because they copy-pasted the principles from ship, that is, vehicle-based combat that existed in the game already. Oh, and there are equally idiotic apologists who claim that this is more realistic. I love to be naive as well. But speaking of shields, this is the most retarded part of the FPS combat. Not only is the most pathetic Care Bear catering bullet sponge I have ever seen, but the shields, the regenerative health, unlike in literally every FPS game I've ever played, starts regenerating just like ships, that is, almost right away, after being broken. And then continues charging even when you get shot and comes back at 50%, just like ships, rather than slowly regenerating from zero. For me, this just shows how inadequate and incompetent designers of Odyssey actually were. They clearly have no perception of what the term regenerative health is or what is meant to do in games, or why the games use this stuff in the first place. For those at home wondering, well, regenerative health like shields or some other type of armor HP for players is given so that it encourages the player to take shelter after getting shot and make sure that the cover is good enough to prevent fire. Then as a reward after a little while, give enough health so that the next firefight they have a chance to engage and actually win. Not act like a bullet sponge accelerator! Yet the worst part about this FPS mockery was not the way it played, though it came close. In a true Frontier Developments fashion, in the true bankruptcy of creative thought, the grind, the material grind V2 is again the core focus and actual gameplay 90% of the time, if not more. The Space Linkaroo! Instead of encouraging the players to upgrade their gear naturally, once more developers have adjusted the values and obvious bullet sponge of the FPS combat to such a level that if you ever want to kill anyone and not feel like you're grinding even to kill them, you have to use the engineering for guns. Funny thing is that even with maxed out weapons you still feel like you're grinding just to kill someone. And you know, it would have been so easy for them to just copy-paste, like they copy-pasted the ship stuff onto the FPS nonsense for engineering as well, and allow materials for the upgrades to have each their own pocket of limited capacity. But no, someone actually decided, nope, fuck the new system. Let's go back to the old engineering and how that worked, before it was specifically changed after community's outcry on how bad and boring it was. No, let's go back to the old days, cause fuck the players and fuck their time. And you know what? No. To further fuck them, let's limit how many materials they can collect before they need to go back to the ship or SRV to offload them. This is golden gameplay! And you know what? I wasted my precious time to grind out one spacesuit from start to finish, just to see how long it takes. Care to take a guess? Remember, it was one spacesuit, one of several, especially if you wanted slightly different upgrades. It took me almost 30 fucking hours! If I speed grinded that, wasted literally no time and dedicated my full attention for one spacesuit, and for each gun it's less, but very little less. And at the same time you would finish normally a great game, you're just done grinding in this one to just start doing what you wanted to in the first place. And even compared to the ship engineering, this is far worse, an exacerbated no-lube ass fucking. But you know the most insulting thing? You like weapon customization, right? You like setting up your weapons like in any FPS game that is out since 2007. Customize them even like your ships and their modules. Well, fuck you! You put the scope on a gun and that's it! It's glued on there with the game director's jizz or something. Not to mention how this is unacceptable in a modern FPS game, but in Elite itself, when you upgrade modules. At the very least, you can remove these upgrades and start fresh. However, if you plan on doing anything on foot, well, you make sure you better get this stuff right. Cause even a little bit different build, and fuck you, grind the whole fucking gun again, or suit. This screams not only of the backwards thinking designed by the game's own principles, but it practically begs you to spend exorbitant amount of time just being online, as if they were running crypto miners in the background while you play. It's just sad and pathetic. The level you only see in mobile games. Even then, at least those know how to hand out dopamine while you do it. Okay, you know, how about we move on to another feature? How about, say, starport interiors? The bottom line is, it's a single fucking room. A decently designed room for sure, but it's just still a single fucking room. Perhaps Star Citizen has spoiled many people, but frankly speaking, looking at No Man's Sky or X4, does it take 3 fucking years to just make one fucking room. By all means, have all the functionality in one place, but how cool would it have been to just walk around the top of the landing pad when the ship's not in the hangar, or see each station's unique vistas, especially considering the tourist and luxury interiors, like those parks or some other interesting areas. And speaking of interiors and megaships, on launch neither fleet carriers or megaships had room interior things. It's kind of weird, because wasn't fleet carriers not originally planned for squadrons as part of the community gathering and support? So an item or a feature that was specifically made for social hubs for, ships and so on and so forth, placed by players for other players, and that would not have this feature interior? It's kind of weird. Now this is an interesting question. Was this a cut feature, or it was never planned to begin with? I somehow suspect the latter case to be more true than the other. Oh, and speaking of the social stuff and potential cut or more likely never considered features, we had station social hubs, that room. But what social activities could we do? So I can look around, I can move a bit, I can crouch, and I can jump. Sorry, no, I can't even jump.
Can you sit down on those chairs?
No.
Can you get a drink with the body at the bar?
No, that's where you exchange those materials for other materials.
Well, what else can you do then?
Nothing? I mean, how could you be so empty-minded? The basics of social features have been established in every MMORPG since 2000, for fuck's sakes.
Oi, they added simple animations just recently, months after release.
Oh, well, thank fuck for the basics, I guess. And that's the best work a 100-developer team can do. Considering that the Nomad Sky is run by 25 developers, Odyssey frankly starts to look like a product that a 5-developer team would shit out. Why am I smelling bullshit all of a sudden? But hey, if this made you question the amount of developers working on this project, that UI will make you raise a whole different question. Have these people ever played Elite Dangerous in the first place? Starting with the on-foot UI. This radial menu is literally every other menu you get from your ship squished in a single small round piece of shit in a corner, controlled by a garbage control set. Now, it doesn't take a genius to recognize that as your main menu, this is kind of a garbage that not even Bethesda would touch. But wait, there's another radial menu, the quick access menu, that in normal and even subpar games is both larger and easier to control with a mouse. Here in Frontier's house, however, this is the pinnacle of UI design coded by a chimp who learned Java yesterday. Congratulations, you made an idiot! This fucking atrocity is an eye-strained, cumbersome, and spectacularly unintuitive facsimile of some kind of an idea that the designer who made this saw in a video game years ago. Sure, Star Citizen's mobiGlass is a complete trash, but fuck me, give me that barely working alpha garbage over this thing. Oh, but we also have, quote-unquote, improvements in existing UI. You see, if you had played Elite Dangerous for any length of time, you might have stumbled upon Community's online tool that lets you outfit a text-based version of your ship. This program, if you can call it that, alone features several amazing quality-of-life mechanics that we do really need in-game. But of course, instead of listening to the community, let's make module storing so convoluted that not knowingly you might sell accidentally your engineered modules rather than storing them, or fill your storage with trash modules just because somebody thought that the toggle button here was a smart idea. Then to outfit your ships when people have gotten used to the single line with modules where you could sort them. Now to confuse the fuck out of everyone, let's make it 2 lines. Genius! Yet at the same time, existing module selection screen and all the categorization is untouched completely, despite experimental tab looking like a girl's bathroom. A fucking mess. As for the galaxy map, now it's an icon-riddled hell. Do you idiots understand that only super common real-life icons without the text should be used? Now you, my dear developer, if you need the proof of how retarded your design is, go remove all the text off your Windows icons. Let's see how long it takes for you to give up. Oh, and in System Map, after fleet carriers got introduced, even the mouthpieces of Frontier knew that fleet carriers cluttered up the UI. But that? Well, fuck that. It's not worth addressing. Icons, icons, icons. Only positives that this UI has brought in is the Galaxy search, where multiple results appear as you're typing, and a single little button that copies system name. I shit you not, that small little button that copies system name is the biggest highlight of the new UI. Let that sink in. And don't you think that I'm coming from the place of, oh, but I was used to the old UI? No, fuck that. It needed a facelift in many places. Just that this is an abomination. However, all of this felt like a footnote to the iceberg of this Titanic, the abhorrent performance, and what some even perceived as clear lying. We start with Alpha. In what their marketing team called Alpha, no one expected this version of barely optimized, if at all, piece of software to be the latest version of their work. Everyone, including yours truly, thought that it was some snippet from months ago just for pure marketing reasons. Yeah, the performance was close to the Star Citizen, but hey, it was the space legs, it was the dream coming true. Marketing, however, are a bunch of cunts. They will present everything up until Alpha as the alpha part of the game, and everything else is just beta. This disgusting trend is very common in games industry. However, with Elite Dangerous, due to some past open letters from the community and the community issues in general, they knew not to use the word beta, so Alpha it is. While in reality it was just Alpha only in the marketing kind of way, so do not be fooled. Now, back to the release of Odyssey. It comes out in 19th May 2021, and the sinking feeling dawned on everyone. The full release, the finished product as they called it was exactly the same as the quote-unquote alpha they gave for the deluxe pre-orders. This was the best they got at the time. Stuttering, frame drops, and inexplicably poor performance was present on all but the most naivest people's PCs. I seriously can't fathom the depths of delusion that someone has to go through to confuse a different lighting look for smoothness of gameplay. But fuck me, there were actually people like that. But why was the performance so bad? As it happens in the community, there were smart and cool folks that could give at least some general insight as to why we were seeing such a bad performance. As it turns out, yes, it was the absolute lack of even the simplest optimization methods like occlusion culling. Coders among us will probably know that writing a code that works and writing a code that is good are two very different things. Even right now, if you go online and download the RenderDoc program, and if you don't care about a game's TOS, by using this program you can witness each step in rendering a single frame that the game shows you. Now, for example, this is how Half-Life 2 renders its frames. Notice how objects that are behind the walls or larger objects do not need to be rendered and thus are not rendered. Well, let's then take a look at what Elite Dangerous does, and the wonderful analysis that Flex Creator made just a couple of days after Odyssey launched. As you can see, unlike Half-Life 2, one of the best optimized games of its time and even today, Elite Dangerous just draws literally everything. When you're outside, the game will still try to draw stuff that is inside, needlessly. Characters, items, whatever it is there, everything. Now that is pathetic. It's so pathetic that 6 months later, it's practically the same. Oh shit, yeah, right, so there's an addendum, right? So literally a couple of days in between me writing and editing this video, as a matter of fact, they announced and released the update number 9, in which they actually introduced, at least seemingly, the first steps for occlusion culling. So this is how it looks right now. However, it still draws, or at least calls out many useless, small little draw calls. And the performance, yes, it is slightly better, but still to nowhere near the level of what they expect themselves to reach for the lower end systems and even higher ones. So there's still work to be done. And make no mistake, this is not fixing the game. How can you fix something when it hasn't been developed? Only now we are seeing the first steps being implemented to actually develop the optimization. So please don't use the word fix next time you complain about Elite Dangerous. This is such a modern game development move. Release an utterly broken garbage early and ignore the negative press and just rake in the money. Then fully finish the work in, say, 2 years and claim that, well, it's good now and just simply had a rocky launch like other games do. This shit is deliberate, damn it! After the launch, developers of course kept on silent, and only when the first reviews arose, then they apologized for the bad performance, and in a corporate fashion, pulled in the main man himself, who said the following things. Braben himself mentions, apologies to who suffers from the problems. Some of our players are reporting poor performance on machines where we would expect performance to be good, and others are saying it's fine. It's like there were actually people who did not have problems? So, if you were stupid or gullible enough to think that it was cool that a company shits out a product in a very unprofessional and undeveloped way, it suddenly is alright? Worst of all, it sounds like this horrible mess to them came as a surprise. As if they themselves were not able to test and assert it before launch. Either you're completely oblivious to what your company does, or you think that the public is catatonically brain dead. And I remind you, this man is in charge of the company, and his own words, Elite is his baby. And then the messages from community team like this came constantly. As to why the performance isn't where it should be, there are plenty of investigations being done internally to look into and rectify this. Investigating performance a month after release? Now I get the PR speak here, but this sort of response acting like, I'm sorry, we don't know what happened, only invites the questions like, well, are you telling me that you, the creators, don't still know what happened? Either you're playing dumb and think that your audience is even dumber than that, and will believe this bullshit, or you really don't know what happened. In which case, what incompetent people are you employing here? Stupidity or malice? Either which one, it looks fucking bad. And then we have responses in a typical British way, like this. We are very much aware that performance isn't quite there yet for everyone. Not quite there yet for everyone? Who is getting an appropriate performance? If you count 60 frames a second on lowest settings on a top-line PC. Sorry, Cupcake, but this is still absurd. And yeah, I know I'm nitpicking the British way of using words, or rather abusing them, but when this Latvian says fuck, it means fuck, for fuck's sake. But returning to second Braben's instance of appearing in the public, in forums at the very least, a few days after the launch, he mentions something interesting. When we first set the minimum specs for Elite Dangerous back in the time of the Kickstarter in 2012, we made the assumption that for low-spec machines the game was playable as long as the frame rate was above 30 frames a second, with 60 frames for higher spec machines. We had a similar thought process for Odyssey, especially considering that the low-spec machines will tend to be 5 years old or more, or be laptops, that 30 frames would be acceptable as minimum spec performance. Alright, well then, there we go. Now, well, I don't have exact minimum spec machine. Now, this is a recommended spec. Right there, that's the RTX, not RTX, but RX 580, which is, as Odyssey says, recommended spec machines. Graphics card at the very least. As for the CPU, well, it's a little bit better. Regardless, the point is, essentially, this thing, just like many other machines out there, would not be running the game quite precisely. However, I would not trust my own brain to register the frame rate, what else, because that's just stupid. So, I used some programs like MSI Afterburner and a few other ones to just test how much would I get. And the data I collected was well, interesting, shall we say. In most environments, the machine managed above 60 frames a second on average with a weird 1% frame drops, which indicated stuttering, which most people will be noticing. So, consistency was low, but that's in a normal space where the spaceships play. How about we take a look at the ground level? How about high-intensity conflict zone? When it came to these conflict zones, no matter if my settings were low as they could go or medium, it was loving that cinematic 30 frames a second and drops, of course. The same happens with my Horse Ripper on high settings, which by all means it should be capable of pumping. For fuck's sake, I'm running RTX 2080 Ti. Funny thing is, with Odyssey, it was the chance for developers to give the in-house Cobra engine that runs Elite a new shine. I personally would have loved the new graphics API changed to Vulkan instead of the current DirectX 11, which they use. Oh, and did you know this funny fact? They're not even using tessellation on planet surfaces either. I wonder why. But I've heard some, shall we say, rumors that developers who understood and coded the Cobra engine for Elite are all gone and no one understands shit about the engine beyond the surface level. So maybe that's the result of the poor performance and lack of development for it. Bottom line, we both can prove by playing normally, and especially if we use extra tools to delve deeper into this absolute travesty. A part of development has simply not been done. And because it hasn't, you can't release this mess. Oh, wait, sorry, they did. They can't release this mess onto the new and old consoles. What are the fucking chances that last-gen consoles, the Piss Station and Xbone, will actually run this? Today, it's been over 6 months and still occlusion culling is barely to be seen, not to mention more in-depth methods. Developers claim performance improvements and yet only the brains of the gullible ones are tricked, cause every time you actually test it, it's the same story. Because of this performance issue, also the game is split in two. Old Horizons with its graphics and planets and whatnot, and a smelly pig with a lipstick, the Odyssey. And yet, even once they sort out this performance, how much of an MVP, minimum viable product, will it be on consoles? Will it be another bullshit launch, or maybe Frontier actually have learned something? Or is it even coming to consoles anymore? Still, after what comes why? Why did this happen? Now, of course, we could apply Hanlon's razor, never attribute malice to which is adequately explained by stupidity. Let's assume that Frontier, at least the people who gave their final go for the product release, in which case that would be Brave and most likely included, did not see the bad performance or lack of content. Literally, they were too busy doing British things like teabagging each other or masturbating over biscuits or something to notice that their employees in Elite team are trying to push this turd out. But hold on, that's applying malice to them as well. So now, let's say that even employees, not a single one of the alleged 100 developers did not notice or were too stupid to see the Odyssey was running so poorly and had cut content. Well, it's not impossible, but very improbable. However, the timing is rather interesting if you look outside the game a little. You may find a rather interesting alternative scenario. Publicly, Odyssey was delayed from late 2020 to the end of Q1 of 2021, and I support that decision. In the words of Nintendo Shigeru Miyamoto, a delayed game is eventually good, a rushed game is bad forever. Frontier set the release date for 19th May 2021. Some claim that it couldn't have been further delayed because some pre-order rules and some other British bullshit, but fuck that, fuck the British laws. There was something a bit more important happening at that point in time, beyond which they could not delay. At the end of May, Frontier, being a publicly traded company, concludes their fiscal year. Of course, the company will remain as silent about anything negative as possible, but to me it seems more believable that developers knew. However, the management and executives especially did not give a single fuck. Fuck the customer, fuck the employees, fuck the goodwill, fuck the product, and fuck the history. The product must be out now! As I said before, given enough time, developers could have made this happen, even if they just started learning how to make the game. Yet the decision to release this expansion, update, what the fuck ever else, before even optimization was introduced, was coming from the top, and indeed the result was devastating. And as I said in my quote-unquote review,
"Hey, Braben, they dropped your baby! Your baby's on the floor, Braben! The fucking baby's on the floor and not flopping anymore like a fish! It's dead, man! They're killing your fucking baby, man! Or wait, was it you who dropped it in the first place, man? What the fuck is going on?"
Perhaps it's right what some of the Glassdoor reviews say. The management and executives are senile and completely out of touch, not only with the products they make, but also with the whole fucking industry. Then, later in investor reports, there's no wonder they blame bad press and reception on, quote, "Unfortunately, the launch was hindered by connectivity issues, and this turned the positive reception of the alpha to one of negativity."
These people think that their investors are idiots and believe these blatant fucking lies. Fuck you, Frontier, you lying sack of shit. Hope your investors see this video series, you incompetent cunt.
In every metric, player numbers, YouTube views on every creator's channel, and general web search popularity of Elite dropped and continues to stay at all-time low. This was not just a bad DLC that did poorly and was overpriced, with shit ton of overpriced exploitative microtransactions. This one fucking move, rather than being a literal Space Jesus second, third, fourth coming in fanboys' faces, instead forced players to see how company actually operated and how much they cared about the fans, the game, and even its own developers. This is how Frontier treats the game and its community that brought this little shitty company out of the gutter where they worked for hire and made literal nightmare fuel like... I shit you not, Frontier made this game and that too was a lie-filled bullshit of a game that was presented in E3 with choreographed lies. Fuck execs and management of Frontier, it was their call to do this, and because of their careless and thoughtless, incompetent, money-grubbing leadership, the game is basically stabbed in the back, kicked in the nuts, and now with spasms is bleeding out in the gutter, while developers have to endure the constant negativity on all sides. Yeah, folks, come join Frontier, where management will never listen to you, and your prospect of growth resembles a zero. Come to Cambridge, the greatest developer house in UK! Oh shit, yeah, I also forgot to mention some random weirdness, so here goes. First off, Frontier has officially announced that they will not work on any more VR related things. And this is not a surprise. You see, just think, when was the last time they actually worked on a VR development proper? It was dead for a long time, we just didn't think or notice. Second, no new ships. Now say what you will, but this literally is the easiest way to generate excitement in this community, so it's just weird that they didn't take this easy bait. Third, after these 6 months, it's understandable, but still, overall, Frontier's attitude is getting snarkier and less professional, starting with the community managers down to some select Twitter posts by some employees. So I guess the pressure is getting to them. Fourth thing, since Elite's universe takes place in the real galaxy representation, we have also the literal moon, a planet that you should have been able to land on in Horizon's days, but was locked off by some weird-ass permit that you could not ever get. Now, still 7 years later since that launch, you cannot land on the fucking moon, despite their marketing team going with herp-a-derp Armstrong moment.
One of the key things I really wanted to push was the idea that you'd kind of get that Neil Armstrong moment when you actually set foot on a planet for the first time.
And the final weird thing, there was no story build-up before Odyssey launched, nothing. Yes, Elite is a horrible story-based game, but even back in the day before Targoids appeared, they had some small story or in-game snippets. With a grand release like Odyssey, you'd expect it to be a no-brainer, especially PR and marketing-wise, to pair it with new features. It'd be a great story trailer or something, but nope, nothing. Not even a hint that Targoids on foot were, happening, like they were leaked a little while back, if they're not just another piece of cut content as well.
So, it's been 6 months, and where are we now? Well, as it happens, the player numbers are at all-time low, the price on Steam is the same, even though there has been a sale or two. But still, performance is rather early access title-like, yet on Steam, curiously, there is no early access title mark or tag on it. So that wonders if this is just simply not some sort of a lawsuit territory. Regardless, at least you can say that, well, hey, Horizons is separate from Odyssey. But it's interesting also that there is no particular word or interesting information coming for console release either.
Is this the end of Elite? Is this how the game dies? This question I tackled in a video a little while back, and the simple conclusion is, it's up to the developers. If fucking No Man's Sky could do it, it technically is possible. But Elite is a 7-year-old game. What are the fucking chances Frontier will stop lying, not only to its customers, but its investors? Get off the shitter and actually prove me fucking wrong! Well, I'm still waiting. However, with determination and actual passion, it is possible. The game is suffering from an incredible imbalance in every single aspect. Money grinding combat is still one of the lower paying ways, many missions lack actual reward representation to their difficulty and time requirement. Engineering is OP as fuck and useless on other parts, ships need a proper rebalance, overall economy needs a rebalance, material gathering is a grind that is incredibly boring, everything in Odyssey that works is also a massive grind, UI actually needs quality of life, multicrew and more so netcode needs a lot more attention, squadrons are a fucking insult to the community, BGS needs an actual impact, ship module outfitting UI needs a redesign, and of course rebalance everywhere. Fuck, I could go on and on how existing features and mechanics just need some tender fucking Catholic love, but I've tried. I've tried galvanizing time and time again, but the only time Frontier seems to acknowledge anything any one of us in the community do is when TheYamiks raises a stink about it, or others cater to the egos of community teams so that maybe, just maybe if they're catered to like children, they would listen. I've seen Warframe and PlanetSide 2 actually give a fuck, and Out of the Dark Days, with actual passion and caring team, come out swinging. The choice is theirs, and no matter how much someone at the Frontier may blame the community or me personally for the failure of the game as a whole, it ultimately is their own doing, just as my content and its success is my fault, be it successful or not.
For now, as Frontier promises, they will support the DLC releases for the first 2 years. However, they are yet to develop a full product, especially for the price they put on it and developers involved. Still, will we get the Titan Targoid, base building, or Targoids on foot, or mining SLF, or whatnot else? Well, no one really knows. And thus, that is the whole thing, the 2+ hours of nonsense about, well, one company and their product, if you will. I really haven't written out this part, so this is basically an ad-lib. Regardless, over the years I've tried all sorts of things with Elite Dangerous. Tried galvanizing the change, challenging the developers to actually do better. And, of course, from time to time, when actually something good comes out, congratulating them, though that has happened rather rarely. So, yeah, I've tried also doing my best to promote the game in of itself. Collaborations with all sorts of other creators, or even mega collaborations, purely for the positive message of the game. And in fact, one of the best videos out there just featured 20+ creators, just showcasing the love for the game. Yet all my efforts have seemed to be in vain, and that kind of makes you question. What does it take for, well, community to actually move this company to do something? Is it TheYamiks making a stink and then them responding? Or is it something positive? Well, neither seems to work either way. So, for the future of Elite Dangerous, it's hard to tell what will happen. I guess I'll just stick around and observe, but, well, as it is right now, it rather doesn't look that good, and the company doesn't seem that interested either. Still, regardless, at the end of everything, I thank everyone who is watching and enjoyed this big extravaganza, if you will. Of course, a big thanks to my cameraman there behind, yes, and more so thanks to the great big support from Patreon, especially folks here somewhere, right? These folks are really awesome. But in any case, well, What is to become of Elite Dangerous? Well, we'll see. As for the part 5 of this potential series, well, time will show whether that is a post-mortem or is it a revival success. It's completely up to developers.
Now, what was not a good move was what happened with the dev diarrhea. Okay, I just realized what I said. Oh, there goes the blooper number 1.
Oh boy, it's time to go, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no, my hemorrhoid itches again.
What? Just get the fuck out! Get the fuck out!
The very last thing done before release is optimization, usually a few months, as code gets goddammit.
That shit in that vein, boy.
Oh yeah.
Time to get that mayonnaise in.
Okay, yeah. Video some guitar. Jesus Christ.
This is the level of come on!
The chemtrails make Thanagoids gay!
This is such a modern game development move. Release an utterly broken garbage or god damn it, just fuck!
Okay,
Open wide!
I see you!
Open wide!
When we first set the minimum... God... Oh, come on! Fuck.
This is where the fun begins. Well, let's look at the bad parts. Beat the horse. Come on, everyone. Beat it hard. Whatever.